All right, it's time to talk basketball with Jose Salviati, editor at CompeteBasket.net. He's Steve Purciello, a longtime educator, vice principal, high school basketball coach, and athletic director. And this is the Shot Clock Pod, the best 15 minutes of NBA random thoughts online anywhere. This is your first time listening. Welcome. We're glad you found. Steve and I have exactly 15 minutes to discuss what's on his mind around the NBA. Today, we'll discuss his latest 13 rules around the NBA article where he shares his thoughts as the NBA playoffs continue in the 2024-25 NBA season. I'll dive over now. We're going to talk a little bit about that. All right. Usually Steve is the one traveling. Today it's me, if you're watching us. So apologies for any kind of muted audio in advance. But Steve, are you ready? Yes, they're right. Start the timer. And we're off. All right. Let's start with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The prohibitive favorite to win it all. Not only has changed, the Thunder's defensive rating way the best in the NBA this season. And we know because we heard it from the Dallas Mavericks.
I think every guy they draft is a good defender. They picked up Hartenstein, who's probably has the best defensive rating of the whole group. And they got him as a free agent. But look at what else. Holmgren's, I guess, a freak because he's got long arms, he's big. He's not solid, a big body, but he's a freak. You got Alex Caruso, and he's probably the best on the ball and off the ball defender in the league, combining both. Lou Dort, I thought should have been the defensive player of the year. I think he's great. He contains the dribble drive. He's just a good defender, and he's made himself into a pretty good offensive player. He can shoot, which he couldn't do when he first came into the league. And then Cason Wallace is another, what a good defender he is. And I don't think I was reading something, somebody said he just plays. He doesn't go by scouting or anything. He's a natural athlete. And by the way, the MVP, he's a pretty good defender. So I'm naming 6, 7 guys, and they're all pretty good. So you take that and you put them out there, and they're relentless. They play, and they're big, they're wide, and they're thick, and they can play. So I think, as I wrote last week, I just think Oklahoma City, unless they mess up with contracts or injuries, they could win 2 or 3, and depending on the money and how that goes.
Yeah. All right, let's flip it now real quick. A little off script, but it's certainly on topic. We know now, as we're taping this, what teams are going to be the finals. We just talked about the Oklahoma City Thunder, really their historic run defensively. How does that compare defensively, just defensively? How do the Indiana Pacers compare defensively to the Oklahoma City Thunder? They've got some good defenders on that team,
They
too.
do. I think the difference would be OKC's got really no weaknesses. You get a guy like Halliburton, everybody's trying to isolate him. So that's a problem. Miles Turner against Towns, and Towns is a really good, great offensive player. But Miles Turner looked like he was in a different league. Towns he couldn't do anything against him, is my point. So there's some weaknesses, I guess, on Indiana. Obi Toppin has trouble keeping guys in front of him. There's weaknesses, although on a positive, Nembhard was just great last night against Jalen Brunson. Nesmith, if he's healthy, is an outstanding defender. And Stan Van Gundy kept saying it throughout the playoffs, watch him get through screens. He just gets through screens. And that's great because then you don't have to switch and you don't have a big on a guard. They have some good ball defenders, but not comparable to Oklahoma.
Okay. You said something that's interesting. You and I are baseball fans. We know the game. And one of the things that's changed about the game of baseball is you've got these specializations, right? You've got the guys who are 6th inning guys, 7th inning guys. No starter goes 9 anymore. It's just the game has become very specialized. And you called out something that I never heard about before. This guy's skill is getting through screens. That was just wild to me. Does that speak to the birth of analytics in the NBA? And now we're looking at the minutia and these very particular things. It's interesting.
Well, if you go back into the game, and let's say when Chuck Daly coached the Bad Boys, the Pistons, it's all screen and roll offense. It's all Chuck Daly ran. And he would create those mismatches. And most teams allow the mismatch. What Nesmith does well is he takes away the mismatch by getting through the screen and staying with his man So now you don't have the big guarding the guard. If the Knicks were
Yeah.
able to do that, they wouldn't have gotten killed in the fourth quarter by Halliburton hitting those 12-footers because all they kept doing was running the screen and roll. Towns was supposed to pick him up, but he kept dropping. And he was dropping deep into the paint. Halliburton just drove to the middle, a little bit past the foul line, and hit those little push shots. It probably hit 3 or 4 of them. And every time the Knicks scored, Halliburton came with something down in the fourth quarter. If you have somebody who can get through a screen, it takes away that mismatch. And not, I
Yeah.
haven't seen a lot of them.
Right.
Neesmith did it really well. And that's rough. That's a problem for the other team because you don't have a mismatch.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, the analytics is taking over, and we're looking at the minutia now. And again, fascinating to me. Tyrese Halliburton, great segue. He had a phenomenal game, a game that we haven't seen before in Game 4 against the Knicks. Then he disappeared in Game 5. You called that out in your article. So I got to ask you: is he a
I think he's a
superstar?
very good player. Superstars
Okay.
bring it every night. They don't have games like he had 2 nights ago or 3 nights ago, whatever.
Yeah.
What was that? Game 5. They don't have those nights.
Right.
They come out and they give it to you. Even on a bad night, they're going to go get you 20 and keep you. And let's face it, Halliburton isn't out there for his defensive ability. So he's got to get you the 10 assists, 20 points to have an effective night. You got to bring it. He's a really good player. And on any given night, he could take over a game as he did in Game 4. Game 4 was one of the great games of all time. But he's got
Right.
to do that every night. Now, and let me just use as a comparison, Jalen Brunson's out there for one reason. He can score. Last night, he didn't have a great night. He still put up 19, which
Mhm.
19 is not a bad night. For a scorer, he usually gets 10 more, but it's not a bad night. Well, Halliburton's bad night was a lot worse the other.
Yeah. From the players that I grew up watching, right, the superstars, Magic Johnson,
Yeah.
Larry Bird, an off night, and I think Magic specifically, he had one game where I think he scored a point, 1 or 2 points, just a horrible shooting night, but he had 22 assists in that game or 18 assists, something stupid. So when one side isn't working, the superstars find another way to really contribute. That's fair, right? I mean, that's still a
I
superstar.
think I look at it where a guy's even on an average night, you got to walk away saying that's the best guy on the team. Meaning the
Wow.
ball might be his all the time. In other words, he's handling it, he's doing things with it, whatever. But there were times in this series, Pascal Siakam was the best guy on the team. Oh,
Right.
you didn't come away saying that. And I can go back in different teams. I'll use the Celtics that won in 2008. Paul Pierce every night. He bought it. He played, he
Yeah.
scored, and he kept you in a ball game. Yeah, Garnett was great, and those other guys were great, but Paul Pierce brought it every night. You didn't see many bad nights from him. And that's what I mean by bringing it every night. Paul Pierce was a great player, but very quietly was a great player. People didn't realize how good he was until Garnett and Ray Allen came along with him. And that's what I'm talking about with Halliburton. Like I can think
Yeah.
about the Olympics. He was the 12th man on the team. And if you really ask yourself, does Halliburton fit with those other 11 guys? No, he's not in their class. And that would be another way to define it.
Yeah. No, all fair. All fair. You talked about Paul Pierce needing those complementary pieces. I think that might be where the Knicks are at. The Knicks are going home. They've got a really good player, Jalen Brunson. You called him out, but maybe those complementary pieces aren't right. You wrote a little bit about the Knicks. Actually, you wrote a lot about the Knicks, specifically about Coach Tom Thibodeau. How would you grade the work he did this season? F being F and A being outstanding.
That's a tough question because beating Boston, he deserves an A, but
Yeah.
probably a B to a B minus overall. I think he grew up, he figured something out, and it's a shame he's as old as he is to finally figure it out that a bench can help you. That was always the
Right.
big knock, and always the big knock why he would never win a title. I think now he's figured it out. And I think the next step, if he has enough talent, then maybe he can win a title. I don't think I think he overdid it with his players for years and really pushed them too hard. In fact, Mikal Bridges called him out on it in March. So I think he gets it. The other interesting thing, Tom Tibbs is a throwback. If you watch during the game, there's not much speaking going on between him and his assistants. If you watch other teams, there's a lot going on between assistants and head. Again, now the contrast, Carlisle. He's got the young lady, not the young, but the lady, Jenny Busick, a lot of work in timeouts and huddles and every
Right.
with the Knicks, Tibbs dominates everything. And that's a throwback. You a million guys on your bench that are coaches. Use them. And I don't know if he's
Yeah.
at that point to understand that. I think he's a very good coach, but I think there's horses for courses. And by that, Tibbs is a good coach with a team that will overachieve, but not a title contender. And so if you're going to have a team that you're building, he's great. But when you get to the, I don't know if I think he might be getting it now, but I don't know if he's.
Interesting. Like every team that is home, it's going to be an interesting offseason. I think the Knicks, we might see them run it back, or we might see some big changes. I think it's a 50-50 shot. We'll see what happens with the Knicks. Let's finish this off with something you called out in your article, which I found fascinating. It's one of these stats that were buried, and you called it out. And again, it's incredibly interesting. In short, NBA playoff teams are getting younger. Tell us about that stat and what you think is behind it.
The 4 teams in the finals in what, 2000, I believe, or 99, the average age was 30 years old. This year, the average age was 26.9, I believe. Now, teams are getting younger, and if you really start thinking about this, guys were making max money. They're older, obviously. They've been in the league about 8, 10 years, whatever. They're more susceptible to injuries. So here you are paying big money for this guy who's more susceptible to injury and doesn't play as much. Young legs are the thing. Look at Oklahoma City, young legs.
Right.
Young legs can go every night. And so are you getting the bang for your buck when you look at it and see these guys who can't go every night? Even Giannis missed a bunch of games this year, and he's making ridiculous money. So it really is becoming a younger game, and I think that's something these teams need to begin to analyze. And by the way, they're cheaper, much cheaper. You get the first 4 years are on rookie contracts. So you're getting guys for a lot cheaper. Yeah, they're getting better. They're not there yet, but you're getting 50 million cheaper player. Of course, you're not going to compare with Giannis. You're going to get somebody who's going to go out every night, and you are going to compare with somebody like Paul George, who's on the down end is making crazy money. So, young legs is becoming more of a trend in the NBA.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talked about this before on the show. Every single NBA champion that's ever won it all, all the other 29 teams look at that and go, "Hey, we're going to do that next year." I think it's hard to emulate the Oklahoma City Thunder, because to your point, this is a young team that defends really well. You're not going to flip a switch and get younger. You're not going to flip a switch and get better defensively, but that's going to be the model. And cat's out of the bag. I mean,
I think the Thunder, and there's been crazy things in the history of the NBA, but there's no
Sure.
comparison. I think 5 games will be the max. Oklahoma
Yeah.
should be able to do whatever they put. The Western Conference is a lot tougher than the Eastern Conference. Oh, I think in the East, the Lakers might have even won a series. It's that much weaker. So, yeah, I think there's a difference in the 2 conferences.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to leave aside the fact that you called out the
No,
Lakers.
I'm using that to exemplify how, you know what I mean? How the Lakers, which are an average team, they could do better in the East.
Right.
Detroit finished, I believe, 5th or 6th. I think the Lakers would have been 5th or 6th in the East. What were they?
Wow. Wait a minute. I think they finished, weren't they 4th?
Oh, wow. But okay, let's say this, their true value as a team would have been like in the East, they would have been comparable with Milwaukee. Is that fair?
Somewhere between Milwaukee and the New York Knicks.
New York Knicks.
Yeah.
No, the only way they could
Between
the
there.
only way
Somewhere
the only
between
way I
there.
could go with the Knicks if they watch them on TV. The Knicks were a better team, much better team. There wasn't a lot to compare there. I thought, like I said, they're better than Detroit, but they weren't better than Indiana. They weren't better than the Knicks. They weren't better than
Sure.
Boston or Cleveland. Did I miss somebody? And Milwaukee, they were comparable. That's fifth in the East. I know the Lakers did try to win. They played hard every night. A lot of NBA teams don't do that. So that's why they had a high win total during the regular season.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And there is our extra credit Lakers talk. It's a habit here.
They're a good measuring point for that young up and coming team. They're
Yeah.
not, the Lakers aren't real good, but like Detroit, maybe in another year, Detroit will pass the Lakers, but that's a team.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's, but
Yeah.
anyway.
Interesting conversation for another time, but that's it. You might have heard the buzzer. I'm not sure. And as again, I'm not in my home studio here, so I'm not sure if you guys heard it or not, but it did go off. But that's it. Our time is up. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Make sure to read Steve's entire 13 Rules Random NBA Top article. We'll link that wherever you're watching. He didn't just write about what we talked about. There were some more things to read. Make sure you read that article. Join us next week as Steve shares his thoughts as the NBA Finals begin. It's going to be an interesting matchup, hopefully, between the Pacers and the Thunder. And of course, please consider subscribing and join us next week on the Shot Clock Pod, the best 15 minutes of NBA Random Pod.